Hi, it's Amy from Blackberry and Pine, and from our kitchen to yours, we are featuring bagels today. I've been working on this recipe since before Christmas, and I will say this, go with bread flour. I did use all-purpose flour, and there's just a few tiny differences in the texture of the dough, and I think for the truest form of a bagel, if you're gonna go through all the trouble of making one, which actually, it's easier than you think, just use bread flour. So what I've done already in this bowl, I have dough that's been resting and is ready to go. How I did this, which we will put the recipe, we'll link it here or post it here. Tess will do her magic. I have no idea how she does that. Anyways, in this bowl, I did a half a cup of warm water with 2 1/4 teaspoons of yeast and a pinch of sugar. I let it sit and kind of foam for about 10 minutes. It really doesn't matter what kind of yeast you use. I just have an active dry yeast. And then after 10 minutes, I added 2 cups of flour. I added another cup of warm water and started mixing it. To that, I added 2 tablespoons of brown sugar, a tablespoon of salt, and 2.5 more cups of flour. A couple different recipes varied in that. You could use 5 cups. I felt like the texture was too dry. And then I took it back to 4 cups and it was just too wet of a texture. 4.5 cups is where I landed, and bread flour. So I let that all combine on my KitchenAid mixer with a dough hook until the dough turned out really smooth. And then from there, I went ahead and let the dough rest for about 2 hours. It might have been more like 2.5. We just at room temperature with a towel laid over the bowl. And now we're going to divide this up and we're gonna start making the bagels. Okay, so we're gonna get started. I have this dough in here. I'm just gonna let it stay in the bowl, and I'm just gonna grab small, it's like it's smaller than a tennis ball, but bigger than a golf ball. I don't know, a lacrosse ball, I don't know, like size piece of dough. And you're just gonna kind of, I have flour right here. I'm actually gonna add a little tiny bit more to this board. And you're just gonna roll this in some flour. This still has all the air in it. And I have found like it's not like you need to fiddle with the dough and really like work it really hard. I'm just gently rolling it, trying to get the shape. And then I take it and I'm gonna go from the bottom and I'm just gonna kind of pinch and push and squeeze from the top. So it's like 3 different movements. You're like pinching, squeezing from the top, and kind of pulling it under. And then once you get there, I kind of flatten it out a little bit. Because if you take all that pinched dough that's underneath and you end up throwing it into the pot of boiling water, what ends up happening is it's kind of funky in the middle when all is said and done. So I try to just kind of like let it rest there for a second, reshape it into a ball, flatten the bottom, and then I'm gonna rest it right there. And I'm gonna just create like a little train, because then as these guys go into the water, I'll keep track of who's needing to go into the hot bath first. And we're just gonna keep doing this until we get to the boiling water. Are all shaped into their little round forms. We're gonna make the hole in the middle and we're gonna add it to this pot. This pot is like right at almost a boiling temperature. You just don't want the water to be really like rolling and like boiling. To this I have a teaspoon of baking soda, 2 tablespoons of brown sugar. I believe the sugar just helps flavor it, and the baking soda, once you put it in the oven, it helps brown the bagel. And so anyways, what we're gonna do is I'm just gonna, in the middle of the board, poke a hole in here. And then once I get a hole started, just go like this. And we're gonna cook these 3 at a time. So I have those first 3 that I did, and the other 3 are just resting. And I'm making a pretty large, I'm making a pretty big gap. So it kind of ends up looking like that. But what they end up doing is they puff up in here. So I'm gonna plunk. And these, I've tested them out. It says a lot of recipes say let it boil 35 seconds aside. The more you boil them, the chewier they are. So I didn't like 35 seconds aside. I liked 30 seconds aside. And there's I've done this so many times, there's a little bit of a look that they get. And so we are approaching 30 seconds here. And then we will flip them and we'll do another 30 seconds. And then what I also will do is I have 2 sheet pans prepared here. I only needed 1. And what I will say about the sheet pans is you want them well greased with like vegetable oil or olive oil, and then you want cornmeal generously poured out on these as well. It's a generous dusting because these stick. They will stick to your pan, and then once they come out, you cannot get them off. It's forever. So I'm gonna put this. So. And then I have my other 3. Okay, so now it's time to put our toppings on these bagels. I'm gonna turn this water off, and I'm gonna bring this sheet over here. The thing that I did when I first started doing these is I had a timer on my phone, and I timed out those 30 seconds. It really is important for me not to go over that 30 seconds because it is all about the texture, and it's all about the bagel being chewy, but not too chewy and not too dense. And if you boil them too long, they will be dense and they'll be really chewy. Anyways, so here's the next step. I just have 1 egg in here, and this recipe makes 12 bagels. So that dough should divide up into 12. I did a little bit larger size bagels, so it made 10 for me. But you're just gonna wanna douse these with this egg wash. There's no water added. It's a solid egg, just whisked up. And this just helps everything attach. And I have cheddar cheese, and I have a 3 cheese blend of Mazzithera, Romano, and Pecorino. And I put a little bit of seasoning in that, and I will show you that in a minute. And then I just have cinnamon sugar, and I have a little tiny bit of Trader Joe's Everything Bagel seasoning. So one of these guys will be that. So I did that. Trader Joe's Everything Bagel seasoning. Woo. And we're just gonna get this guy right here. On top. It looks like I put a lot on there, but this guy's gonna get really big and round, and that will be the perfect amount. I have this Asiago, Mazzithera, Pecorino cheese blend, and what I added to it, just for a little bit of extra flavor, was Penzeys has a spice called Justice, and I really like it. It's got scallions and garlic and onion, and it does not have any salt in it. So I added a lot to this, and with these, when you're adding the cheese to this, kind of go around the outside when it kind of falls to the outside, because that will end up sticking, and you'll have like that crispy cheese layer underneath the bagel. And I'm gonna do another one of these guys in this flavor. My kids like the cheese ones the best. That's kind of been everyone's consensus is the cheddar cheese ones. And then today I just tried these ones, and my daughter liked it and said it was really good. So we're just gonna put a generous amount of cheddar cheese, and this is just gonna drip down the whole outside. I know that looks like a lot, but it just literally covers the entire bagel and drips down the outside and creates this crust. And then I also have cinnamon sugar. So I'm gonna keep the cinnamon sugar away. And this is the first time I've tried this one. So I'm just gonna be, again, generous because this bagel will expand. And these guys are gonna go in the oven. So here are our bagels. We put them in the oven at 425 for 20 minutes, And my oven runs hot in the back, so I had to spin the pan halfway through. But here is our delectable little cinnamon sugar one. And here are the Mizithra, Pecorino, and Romano. And see how those are easily coming off? You guys, it's because I generously greased the pan. Here's our everything bagel. And here's the 2 cheese ones, which I'm telling you, you gotta grease it generously. Because these ones are a son of a gun to get off if you don't. And I just have like a really sharp, flat, like fish spatula for turning fish. And voila. These, you might only see 9, my daughter ate one. But guys, make some bagels. And here's the other thing. If you wanna make them, you can prep the night before, like if you want some Saturday morning bagels. Just stick your dough in the fridge, and then in the morning, let it sit out on the counter and come to like room temperature. Just let it kind of fluff back up, because it won't completely rise in the fridge. And take like 2 hours to do that, and then have fresh baked bagels for the morning. From our kitchen to yours, happy bagel making, and have a great rest of your evening.